back, and I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Threlked, who is the Global Manager of Sustainability, Energy Supply, and Reliability at General Motors, GM. Rob, thank you so much for joining us on Sidebar.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I often think of you as sort of the utility whisperer, like the one that knows how, as a corporate, to be working with utilities, to be getting more clean energy on the grid. So tell me, what do you think is in the future, the evolution of the utility-customer relationship to spur on clean energy?
I think it's evolving quite nicely. I mean, the utilities are obviously actively engaged in the process. They see where the trends are going, and they obviously are following where the cost curves are, as we are. We're interested as corporates to access low-cost, clean, renewable energy, low-carbon renewable energy. And so, they're seeing the same trends that we are, but I think it's aligning our sustainability targets. I mean, you see utilities looking at, I look at some of the ones in Michigan that, decarbonizing to be 100% zero carbon, net carbon by 2050 or 90% carbon reduction. It's similar to our goals, being the fact that we want to be 100% renewable energy by 2050. So you're starting to see alignment of goals too, which I think is an important development and moving the industry forward.
So you do a lot of stuff locally. I think you earlier this year said you had gotten $13 million over the years in incentives from CMS, from Consumers Energy, in Michigan. Mm-hmm. But I'd love to know a little bit more about your international aspirations, because you do a lot of work everywhere, right?
Yep.
So what's next?
Well, what's next for us, and I'm glad you kind of brought up the $13 million too, because that'll actually broaden it back out as well, because that actually is related to energy efficiency efforts that we do as a company. And so I think one of the things that, as we go down the path of looking at renewables globally is you also need to think about energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so, the first effort you really need to look at as you look globally is what can you do to reduce your energy consumption in general? And then how do you actually replace it with renewables? Because you can't go to zero. I still got to make product. We still got to make vehicles. And so, we're always going to be consuming energy, and so then it's a matter of leveraging those similar type of partnerships and other corporations. We've been here with the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, leveraging the other corporations that have similar goals and aligning those efforts, locally as well when you look at the international operations. And I think, for us, from a General Motors perspective, in China we've done, roughly 38 megawatts of rooftop solar with our joint venture partners. And, it's in a lot of ways, it's doing what we've already done, but it comes back to ultimately setting that goal. If you don't have a goal, you're not going to be able to go out internationally and talk to your other, regions and say, hey, I want to source renewable energy. And they're going to look at you and go, well, that's great. Well, what's the driving force? Well, here we've got a target, a goal to be 100% renewable. Then they listen.
So I understand that sequencing of wanting to make sure you get the energy efficiency down and then going on to the clean energy. And you talked a little bit about the other markets, but I'd love to know how you think about this strategy in a holistic way and the next steps for GM to reach that deeper decarbonization, whether that's the international deals or the supply chains or finding new alternatives to industrial thermal energy or things like that.
It's really a combination of all the above. I mean, if you truly do want to decarbonize, it's energy efficiency, it's renewables, it's electric vehicles. It's thinking about how can those electric vehicles be a resource to the grid. That's your load. You've got generation that's intermittent. You've got load that's intermittent. How do you then merge the way that consumers actually drive those electric vehicles, charging when the electrons are actually green or when the grid is actually saying, I've got that flexibility. Obviously, you don't want to charge it during the peak time, for all the reasons that we wouldn't want to do that. Cost being one, but reliability being another one. And then it's, thinking about how do you leverage policy and scale to drive that change. I mean, it goes back to kind of our discussions around the utilities, getting engaged in the integrated resource planning. It's not just locally in the Michigan utilities. Many companies are utilities and even international ones. And interestingly enough, a lot of your international utilities are the independent power producers developing the renewable energy projects globally. So how do you start to think about leveraging all those resources in a way that drives ultimately greening of the grid? I mean, if you really want to get to a lot of customers, it's really starting to transcend the whole industry into growing the amount of renewable energy generation globally.
Well, thank you so much for coming and for joining us here. It's always a pleasure to speak. We are going to throw to one more commercial and we'll be right back.